27th Budget Finance Committee meeting. Everybody learned a lot of good valuable stuff at the school board last night, so we can move through that budget. We ought to have received the minutes for May 19th. I know I got them on email, and we got a copy in front of us both, and if so, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Schaefer. Mr. Jernigan, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, well, we're going to move into the budget review. We'll start with easy and work our way up. Apparently, we'll start with the cafeteria fund review and expenditures. And Mr. Odom, Mr. Sandvik, Mr. Clardy, if y'all want to come up, we'll start there. Go to capital projects into the general purpose school fund. Where do we start?
Okay. We are going to start with the cafeteria. I've given you some additional cover sheets. Some of them may have changed slightly. That the cafeteria is going to be really easy, and there was no change on the cafeteria on your cover sheets. That's Fund 143. Revenue 16,525,542. Expenditure 17,505,993.
And there's no property tax in this budget. So
Right. Motion to approve is presented.
thank you, Commissioner Allen. Second, Commissioner Pease. Any further discussion about the cafeteria budget? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're moving right along. We'll move on to the capital projects, revenue and expenditures.
And if you would, go to the sheet that I gave you. There's in the packet in front. It's colored. There is a change, and we delayed in making any adjustments for the ADA change because Mr. Schmidt knew that the first group that came out was incorrect, so we waited to make changes for the ADA. I waited until the state sent us the revised numbers. So that's one effect of the change where the city received more than what initially budgeted. While doing that, I thought, well, so we're going to do the ADA. I did a pulse check on assessments to ensure that,
I assume that's adjusted daily attendance,
yes.
not American Disabilities Act, which we run into a lot with the school board,
Look
right?
at the average daily.
Actually, it's probably
Average, okay.
WF weighted full-time
Yeah.
equivalents. Yeah, WFADA, WFTE ADA. So made the change. So anyway, I also checked with the assessor's office to find out what the latest assessments were and found that the numbers that they've given me in April included pilots. Now what happened, what the effect of that is $2.2 million that we had budgeted across the funds is gone. The effect on education capital projects, where you see change in penny, is $46,819 reduction. The very front sheet that I gave you the new assessment, the estimate of property tax based on the new assessment that was on the front page of the packet that I put in front of you. You know you've got the right one if it's dated on top 5/27/2015. So with the assessments given to me today, a general fund penny for a new penny is $624,280. A school penny is $531,112. So as you talk about the educational capital projects, the revenue that we really have for this fund is $2,464,438. Expenditures $3,914,770. Revenues are below our expenditures by $1,450,000. There's an estimated beginning fund balance of $1.2 million, $1.27. We're showing a deficit. We cannot have a deficit. To balance, we would need 2.7 cents. to balance the revenues
Which
to
is what
expenses.
Health Net proposed last night, is not 7 cents.
Well, you've already got 437,
Yeah.
so, you know, and I will sit, when we were in there, I understood that they adopted the budget of 3,914,000. Right?
Budget as presented.
Budget is presented, the 3,914,000. So now you're talking about the revenue. So you need to add some cents to this.
Well, I remember reading last night 7 cents on something, which is, we're right at 7 cents anyway, but
Yeah, so
I thought the
I don't-
recommendation was to take that, it used to be a nickel, which had dwindled to 4.37 and bumped that to 7 cents.
Well, I wasn't for sure that that is what what the vote was. If the vote was as presented, they didn't present revenue.
Yeah, they
right?
didn't present
No.
revenue.
They just presented the
Right.
expenditures.
Right.
So,
But they did have a 7 cents up at the top somewhere
Yes.
to indicate that's about how much they
Yeah.
sold
So,
it like.
y'all are,
It's in the header.
you're telling me you want
Based
to
on
add
7 cents.
to make sure there's enough revenue equivalent of 7 cents? Is that what you're doing?
So,
That's what I took from last
Okay.
night. Go ahead, Commissioner
I
Shea.
was just gonna say, so if we make a motion here to increase the penny for the capital projects by 1.63 cents, and we pass that, or something to that facsimile, then they're gonna have to adjust some.
Well, that would make 6 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they have to spread it out, decide what most important, and then
Yeah.
come back next year and see what we can do.
Or that they're going to use some of their fund balance?
And one of the things that we do have to remember with this fund, since it's entirely funded by property tax, we can't get started on the projects if we don't have fund balance.
And that is true.
Yeah, because the first year or two, until we built up some fund balance, we had to concentrate on, get them. Well, we lent it some money one year, I think, from GPS. Yeah, and we can't start projects.
But the numbers here reflect the 2.37, I mean the 4.37 cents.
Right, right. Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes, it does. So any new added penny is going to be added at $531,000.
Question,
Makes sense.
since we started this Educational Capital Projects Fund, what's the most money that has ever been in it at the beginning of the year, not counting fund balance? You know, what, the most money that, 4.37 or 5, is
Probably this year's,
2 cents.
2,415,000. It's probably, yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion then that we increase the Capital Projects Fund by 1.63 cents on the property tax, which would bring it to 6 cents. And that would give them 531,000. That would give them $3,186,000 to start with.
Okay, we have a motion in front of us. Need a second if we're going to move that forward. Motion dies for lack of a second. Personally, I would hope, since we apparently don't address this with every, how long have we been doing this? 7, 8 years, something like that?
2007, 2008 budget.
So 6, 7 years. And we haven't addressed it in between all those years, so. You know, it'd be nice if we would leave it where it gets, and so we'd have to take it out of certified rate and make an adjustment on that.
Every year.
Well, not every year, right?
Well, yeah, you're right.
Well, you know, when we originally did this, we had said we were gonna keep a nickel in there, and we'd fallen below the nickel. I definitely don't mind bringing this back up to the nickel there, but how much would that be, Lisa? And would that actually, I know that would not pay for, you know, everything that we've got on this list here. What would that do to us?
To take it to a
To
nickel?
bring it back to the nickel.
That gives it 0.63 cents.
Which would bring it back to what we originally had said. But that still, would that give them the money to operate?
That'd give them $2,650,000.
Okay.
Well, that's, that much I was very definitely willing to do. You know, I don't know how the rest of the guys feel on this, not, it may, y'all may
Okay.
wanna go more than that. But I'd be willing to, well, we discuss it a little bit, but.
It's 5 cents is 0.63 cents, right?
More.
More.
More. Okay.
.0063.
0.063.
Just take the school penny and multiply it times.
That's what I'm.
Alright, 531 times 5 cents.
Yeah, but I'm only coming up with $3,345.
We should come up with $2,655,000 and
Mr. Odom
$531,000.
belonged to his slide rule.
Yes, I need a slide rule.
This has been a very
I don't know what mine-
good program. It's done, it's done.
Rob?
We
I
don't
hadn't
have
made a motion on it yet.
And I'd like to see
I wanna see
something.
what the numbers are, and two, I don't know, you know, if that's really where we wanna head with it.
Well, while they're working on their calculations, I think it's important that we, address what Mr. Clardy said last night, which is, as our buildings continue to age, this budget's gonna need to increase if we're gonna maintain these aging buildings. Because they're just gonna need more
Okay,
and more. So,
I had my decimal
so to hold us at the 5 that we set up how many years ago?
I would hope we'd increase it,
Right.
you know, but I was ready to support the 7 cents
Yeah.
personally, because this has been a very successful program. We've got more schools than ever. If you walk through our schools 8 or 9 years ago and walk through them today, it's a different world than where it was. And they've done stuff that, with this dedicated money, and we don't want to go back to, in my opinion, to borrowing money
Right.
for roofs and air conditioning, things like that. I mean, let's just buy, in my opinion, bite the bullet and pay for those things, because I don't want to pay for a roof over 20 years.
Yeah.
It's going to last less than that, years than that. You know, you're still making payments on it's gone, but,
Or have to choose between which roof gets fixed.
yeah. But,
Like I
Mr.
said,
Clardy, wait a minute.
I just wanted to say that, over the years, we've learned to work very smart on this stuff. And at a certain point, you work as smart as you can. You start, as you increase your intelligence on these issues, you make progress. But once you reach the optimum level, it all moves off and leaves you if funds are not there. So we need them.
I'm sorry, Mr. P. He had his pen up for us.
Well, I was just wanting to know, where we were under, how much under we were. So basically what your motion was doing was making it 6 cents versus the 7.
So we need 2.63 to get to
To
the 7.
balance. Yeah. Oh,
Or to
sorry.
get to the 7.
No,
Get to
yeah.
the 7.
That won't quite be 2.73. That'll put us at an even number.
It-
Some of us like even numbers.
So, yeah, I do like even numbers. But if you put,
Over time, the certified rate that we put in this account has gone down with reappraisals. But also over that period of time, there's an offsetting effect where there's more property value and therefore more money going into the account for that reason. The rate's gone down, but the property that's being assessed has gone up. And I think the result of that is that this last year, it had more contributed into it than in any other year, even though the rate was lower than it had ever been. So there's kind of an offsetting effect.
But the problem is we're adding more schools.
We're adding more schools.
We added how many thousand square feet when we added Stewart Creek, and then we've added an addition at Blackman just in the last year. And so if we keep adding more facilities there, I would guess there are
We've
6 or
added
7
at
more
least
buildings than
500,000
where we
square
started
feet
this.
since in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Also, what some of us consider new schools aren't new schools anymore.
I still consider Walter Hill, Lascassas, Kittrell, and Rock Vale, and all those new schools.
The
They
re-roofing
are.
project in there for next year is Barfield School, which opened in the 98-99 school year.
That's really a new school.
Yeah,
But now it's ready to be re-roofed.
but, well, that's what what Mr. Bond just said is what I asked Mr. Sandvik was, last year they had more money came into that fund than in any year previously. But it's not enough for us to get more.
I venture a guess we've got 3 camps at this table. We got some 7-cent people, we got some no additional cents people, and we got some 6-cent people. So we're supposed to see who outweighs the other.
Okay, well, I'm gonna test the waters.
Way to go, Rhonda.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjust the rate to get them to 7 cents.
7 cents.
Which would fully fund the capital projects. I really need a second.
Need a second, continue. Going once,
I'll second that.
got a second, all right. Further discussion, or does everybody already know everything they need to know on?
For sake of discussion, if something had to come off the list, how would you go about determining what comes off if we don't fund it fully?
We just go back and look at everything and see what's
In
in
the
the
worst
worst
shape.
shape, reprioritize and go from there.
And I had Gary and Kenneth Curley show up at my desk right about a month ago.
Right.
We need money, Jeff. If you look on that page under the chillers, Blackman Middle School, Blackman Elementary School. And these are bid prices that we did get the bids in since we first prepared this. But coming in and needing 200, well, at the time we were thinking more than that, but as it wound up, $220,000 for those two chillers. Our debate was, do we do a budget amendment right now? The pro to that, these have to be manufactured. We would have had them underway. Well, no, we'll be good and we'll put them in next year's budget since it's just by the time we got in the bid. But yeah, we are so big, $200,000 items come up quickly.
And the issue is if we start school without
Yeah.
an end and
Mhm.
the other one goes down,
Yeah.
we don't have any
Yeah.
cooling in our school.
Yeah, right.
So,
That'll help your electricity.
and
It will.
it will.
We'll take them out of the burn schools.
Not the temporary stuff.
Some of us
Will you
actually
come
went to
down and
school out
answer
there.
my
Did
phone?
you? I think Eric and each took out to high school.
You think he wants to go down in the barn? You think he wants Sheriff would want his to go down in the barn too?
But we do have, large dollar items hit quickly with our students, and we have to move fairly quickly. We were able to, not too willingly, but we were willing to defer this one until the next fiscal year. So,
I just think it makes sense to get out in front of it, like you said. If we get to the point that we start skipping deferred maintenance on things and cutting corners, we take one of our most valuable investments in the community, and we're splitting hairs on it, and we're going out and we're borrowing money, and in the long run, it's going to end up costing us more money. When it comes to education in these schools, we've made the investment into it. We need to maintain it and stay ahead of it. So that's why I gave it a second.
And in the past, we have bought chillers out of bond proceeds, and we paid for them over 20 years.
Sounds to
Doesn't
me
make
like
sense.
the sheriff's, the jail last year, and the chiller out there, that one was going. Now we're talking, you got about 6 on it.
Well, and before we
You know,
vote,
we've made a lot of progress. We've gotten rid of all the old sewer systems. We've got new
Except
sewer
for one.
systems except for Buchanan, and we're working on that one. We've got all new thermal pane windows in all the schools except Buchanan, and we're going to do that. We're, working on a new roof, but when we started, it's only going to be a few years down the road until those that just started funding have to be replaced again. So it's just a continuous, but we've made a lot of progress, but we've got a lot more real estate now than we've ever had.
well, the thing I was gonna say is just, the school board, the central office, you all have been so completely transparent with your needs. It's not like, there's no, I think Doug Schaefer maybe said it last night, there's no shell game, there's nothing hidden, there's no chandeliers in here, or fancy cars, or, there's no fluff. There's nothing in here that we can pull out to say, no, you don't need that. You need all of it. So now we just need to decide, are we willing to give you and the children of this county what you need? And are we going to protect that investment that we've made in these schools? And I can't for the life of me think of a better place to spend 7 cents of our tax rate than on this cause.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Baum?
No.
Commissioner Jernigan?
No.
Commissioner Kaplan,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
No.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Nope.
Commissioner Jordan.
Yes. Motion fails.
Just for info, the 7 cents wouldn't meet the budget that they requested anyhow, because we just lost
Just
what
But it, yeah,
Penny made it
they'd use a little
less.
bit of their fund balance.
Okay. You mean the one that's not balancing with the initial budget? Never mind. This one. This one.
Budget is, that motion has failed. We'll entertain another. Mr. Schaefer might want to reattempt his, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, because it never made it. I will, okay, I'll put it out again, that to make it a total of 6 cents, which is an increase of 1.63 cents over what we have now, and we look at it again next year. Because we got a lot bigger problems in the capital projects fund here, and with where we are. And I think this year's 6 cents would be reasonable. That's an increase of 1.63 cents, so I'll make that motion.
Well, I'm a 5-cent guy, but I'm gonna second his motion, so that, I guess that up me whether I wanna say it or not, but.
We've got a motion for 6 cents and a second. Any further discussion? This is supposed to be the easy one. Call the roll.
Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Baum,
No.
Commissioner Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaplan,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan.
Yes. Motion passes.
Okay, so 6 cents would be the property tax for this, but the appropriation, should we vote on the appropriation? Just on the money? No need to vote on the appropriation.
We have to give them an opportunity to adjust.
Well, they could, this adds 865,000 to the revenue. So this would effectively, if you kept the same appropriation, their fund balance would end up at $735,000.
Would not end up at a negative $735,000? So they're at a negative 1.4 million now.
Yes,
Yeah, but.
that is, but if you added 865,000 in revenue,
So we're
so
still
that
negative.
you're positive.
Yeah, you're adding to this number.
Oh, that number, I thought we, oh, that's a change, okay, that's a
Change.
change, okay, all right, sorry,
So,
still learning. All right, we'll entertain a motion on the expenditures. Yes,
Do you want us to come back with our own proposal? We might use a little fund balance, but
well, I mean, to me, that's, the next thing is, what are you
Yeah.
appropriating for this? And as presented, $3,914,000. There's not a fund balance requirement on this particular fund. And adding that money to it, to 6 cents, they will still end with a positive fund balance.
you can do your current appropriations. And if you decide different, you can bring it back to next Thursday's budget meeting and ask to adjust, if the committee feels okay approving the appropriation.
They know we're reasonable people, and if a meteor falls out of the sky on some gym roof or something, we'll have.
But they've got enough money to fund the whole $3.9 million
Reasonable is a loose
expenditure.
term.
And still have
Fund balance left.
a fund balance of how much left? That $1,273,000 goes down to how much?
735.
So they can fund the whole
So they can get a whole
list and
bunch.
still have $700,000 left in their fund balance.
So,
They just may have to wait
Yeah.
on some of the projects till later in the year when the revenue comes in.
That's right.
You telling me I should have held out for 5?
And they really have to wait. They might have to wait till the end of the year and start putting some projects into next year.
well, we need a motion on the appropriations.
Motion to approve.
Thank
This
you,
is recommendation.
Mr. Allen,
Second.
Mr. Jernigan, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now we can move on.
Yeah, now you move on.
General purpose school revenue.
Okay, on this budget, and go to the sheet that I gave you out. 141. I revised the penny and the ADA, which takes out $1,239,000. So the estimated revenue is $302,946.62. Expenditures at $144,000. That is what came from last night. In speaking with Jeff, the number that feels most comfortable bringing forward is what their estimate of ending fund balance is $22 million. That still gives them a negative $1,197,000. Can't have that. Also have to have a 3% estimate in their fund balance, which would be at $9,784,000. Add that to the deficit, and you've got to at least put 20.68 cents in to have a 3% fund balance.
Now comes the fun part.
That's better than the 31 cents you saw before.
Are we comfortable with the fund balance now with, or you were wanting to wait till after the end of the month to have better?
I'm comfortable with $22 million. We will be more comfortable as he may close those.
By the time we get ready to talk about those meetings where we're setting what we're going to go for publication, we may have changes even then. But this is the number he feels comfortable tonight.
Most of us, all but one, and I don't know if you got a chance to watch the tape or not, but saw the presentation last night, pretty in-depth. And we're $23 million short. As Commissioner Schaefer said, he didn't see much fluff. I didn't see any fluff. Unfunded mandates here and there and everywhere. So, take any motion anybody wants to throw out.
Mr.
Mayor.
Mr. Sandvik said he was comfortable with the $22 million. But does that mean, Mr. Sandvik, that you were comfortable that we will exceed the required minimum of 3%? Or should?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, at
Okay.
22 million, yes.
All right, so we don't need a few more pennies just to be sure we missed the mark on the 3%. We think we're okay.
I think we're all right on
We
that.
still need 20 cents.
We still need more than 20 cents.
They need 20.68%,
We'll
yes.
probably get by with 20 cents.
Oh.
No, unless we're going to
He's
do
comfortable,
it.
he's comfortable.
Revenue will come in a little better than projected.
But we gotta budget it.
Yeah.
I don't know who's ready to vote for 20 cents, but
Well, I'll flagpole again. Make a motion that we allocate the 20.68 cents to this fund balance.
we have a motion to add 20.68 cents to the revenue side of the tax rate for the schools, GPS school fund. Is there a second? Going once? Going twice? Motion fails for lack of a second. A wise man told me when I was first elected, if you want to stay popular as a commissioner, stay off the budget committee and the planning commission. He was right.
And you and I are both.
And I've been on both all these years. And the 3% fund balance is not just our policy, that's from the state.
States.
So there's no choice on that. So if you're not gonna vote for the 20.5 cents, we'll take recommendations on where to take it out of the budget.
All right. I think that we could cut 1.2 million from their budget. That, of course, they could do it wherever they want, but I think it, I get kind of tired of every year. We gotta do stuff like this, and it's all put on ours because of what we're told we have to have. And one thing, I think, with all we put into energy in the last couple of years, with low flow toilets, the lighting, the windows, and there's something we just approved so we can cover the temperatures. Okay. Well, I'll say this will probably make a lot of people upset with me, but we keep our cooling, except at night, but we keep it at 78. In the winter, now we do have gas heat. That helps. And we keep it at night when we're in it at 64, 66 during the day. The upstairs unit where all the bedrooms are stays off in the winter. One thing in there with what we put into the energy saving, we can adjust 1 degree by what we, in the winter and lower, and 1 higher in warm weather months. That's where part of my logic of where I'm coming from this. Then the other is, they come in with their computers that would go in with state testing and all, so buy them. That's it, but we gotta have them. And we also, RTI, retention to intervention and instruction, correct? Is that what it is? Response. Okay, response, okay. And but this year we're supposed to have those people in every school that cover every grade.
It'll be another year before you do high school. We had to go through 8th grade.
So you're not adding any of them this year? Okay, well, that threw part of my thing out because that's where I was going to cut it. And the reason for that is that, to me, they've got to be challenged up in Nashville, or every year it just gets more and more. You've got, 4 or 5 systems now that are suing the state. I don't really want to do that, but somewhere you got to say they pat themselves on the back when they cut the sales tax by 0.25% or something, and then they dump millions back on the local governments, the counties and the cities. So that's why. Well, since that's not going to be gone, I would revise what I was thinking we could cut it down. I think we'd probably, something like 900,000 I think we could find in it. And that's not going to help that much, but that's going to keep 20% and keep our fund balance. The 20 cents and keep our fund balance are pretty close to it. So that's just a suggestion to hear what somebody else has got to say, what they can live with or whatever.
I'll chime in on one other item. We've talked about $2 million for computers for assessment testing. We need these for assessment. Hopefully we could use the computers for other things. I don't know to what extent they could be used for other things. I think that, I guess here's kind of what I'm wondering. We kind of have this $2 million earmarked for these computers for assessment, but it's not like we don't have any money for computers in the budget. There would be $4.3 million in the budget. Is there
Not all of that is technology. Most of it is.
Most of it's technology, not all of it. To what extent could we use that amount that's typically in that line item for these new computers, and that way we're able to use the new computers not only for assessment at the end of the year, but for some of the things that we would have bought out of that line item.
And we will be using them for other
I'm
things.
sure. It's
One of the other big expenditures we have in that technology part of our budget is, and one of the areas we've fallen behind in, servers.
Life safety in that.
Life safety's in there, the alarms.
We do voice over
Telephone
IP too.
switches.
All of our telephone is now, we're one of the first ones. Really, that everything is over the internet, your telephone service and all, so it includes more than just.
Yeah.
It includes more than just computers. I guess I was asking the question because I was wondering to what extent could we use this $2 million that needs to go towards new computers for assessments? To what extent could we use those computers during the year in lieu
Oh, we do.
of money that we would have been
Yeah.
spending on.
Yeah.
It's just, it's really replacing the units that are not at least Windows 7. Now, many of these will go into computer labs, some will go into classrooms. We actually have bids for some are laptops, some are the standalone type, but they're just really replacing much of what you have. And in some instances, you can add to it because we can run other software on the others too.
Yeah.
But they're not dedicated to just testing at all. That's no intention.
I understand that. And maybe I can ask the question this way. It seems like we've identified these computers we need for assessment. They cost $2 million, so we've raised the allocation in line 722 for instructional equipment by about $2 million to pay for these computers. But it seems like we would have been buying some computers out of that line item in the budget anyway, so when you say you need computers for assessment, it's not like you need to increase the budget by exactly that amount. There ought to be some substitution that can go on where some of the new computers that we use for assessment were computers that we would have been buying anyway during the year, even if we hadn't had needed them for assessments.
You know, I can remember, was it 3 years ago, the city for their about 7,000 students put $5 million in for the computers and technology. They're in good shape. We aren't. The minimum is the test half at one time simultaneously. So the number, that 3,711 or whatever it was to meet the state minimum. That's how we counted it. We went from school to school, inventory, which we track on the computer. How many Windows 7 or units do you have? And that's how we arrived at that figure.
Why do you have to test half the students in a grade at a time? The state says so?
They have a window. They give you a window of time of so many days to complete the 4th grade math test. And then you have to do the English language arts part of the test. So it's spread out over a number of days. So in their calculation, that's basically what they're saying, that you're going to need this number to test that. Now there's some things I still want. Another problem we're going to have with this minimum number is we're going to be testing some of these children in the afternoon to pull it off. When you got the minimum number, ask any teacher in the world, that's not the best time to test a kid.
Especially right at the end of the day.
But in order to have the test completed within the window that the state sets, that's going to happen. I just can't see how that will not happen.
Yeah. I don't suppose there's any way you can appeal that they have sound logistics as to why they came up with that.
You know, the first year they may help you a little bit on some, but again, it's not, like I said last night, they're saying that it costs them $6 roughly to produce a paper and pencil test. Has to be sent off, scanned, processed. Where with the online assessment, it all goes in and it goes straight to the computer. Doesn't have to pay the scanning. So, you know, the first year, is the state going to furnish part of it? Maybe, but I don't think you're far away at all from the fact that if you want to do paper and pencil, you got to pay for it. I don't think that's far out.
No, what I was thinking is the time element that they give you. Why does it have to be that short? I mean, you know, you could test. What I'm getting at is, you'd rather do them all in the morning and start. And I don't know how long the tests are or anything like that, but if you could spread it out, and you would have kids one grade, or if it's high school, say Algebra 1, test everybody Algebra 1, and I don't know how many would be in a certain high school, but there may be enough that you can get Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 at the same day, all of them. Then when you go to English, everybody takes English, but they don't all take the same English, and they're not all tested on the same. And what I'm getting at is, when they're not taking a test, why can't they be in the classroom with instruction?
Oh, yeah. Well, the instruction will not stop for text testing. That's one of the things the state's saying. So some students will be taking the test and some will be receiving instruction.
So you're saying this is all done in a school in a week is what's happening?
No, they may even be a little bit more than a week in some instances, but you got multiple tests. You got multiple subjects that you're doing.
Yeah.
4 major subjects. In most of your high schools, you're running about 500 per grade. That's a good round number to use, you know, anywhere from 1,800 to 21 or 2,200 in a school. So they have to have 4 years of math. They don't only test Algebra 1, they test Algebra 1 and Algebra 2.
Yeah.
They're now testing English 1, English 2, English 3. They're testing U.S. history. They're testing chemistry. So the number of assessments the state's thrown out, that's the problem with the window. It's just numbers of subjects that are being assessed.
If
You
I
know-
understand properly, some of the testing they wanted that 60%
There's to be 2 tests a year now. Just divided into 2
time
parts.
frame. About 60% of the instructional year is through. And then the other piece at 90%. So by just having those goals, because you don't necessarily want to test someone at the 50% level when the test will be evaluated on the 60% level. So I think that's part of the reason for
You know, they're normed
restricted
for a period of time,
timeframes.
whatever it is.
We also have all of our life safety and phones and bell systems in there. We relocated portables and rewired them. All types of repairs to existing systems. We get as many as 6,000 work orders a year on our computer stuff and our technology stuff. So all of that repair stuff comes out of there. It's
That's still out of line item 722, you're saying?
Some of those are in other pieces of that are in other lines.
One of the reasons why I ask about these computers is that my recollection is that in general, the last several years, the school's budget has been going up about 2% a year. And our enrollment last year went up by
We didn't have any raise to speak of. We didn't get the $120 raise.
We have $120 for
But the
insurance
state
last
makes
year.
a big difference.
and our enrollment went up 1.2% last year. And so one of the reasons why I think this committee is probably struggling with this budget at the moment is because the increase in appropriations that are being proposed here would be a 6% increase from last year, as opposed to the 2% increases that we've seen the last several years. And in fact, if this budget only increased by 2% from last year's allocations, we actually wouldn't need a tax increase at all, assuming you use some out of fund balance, but you could still honor your 3% reserve requirement. So really one of the reasons why this is, why we're struggling with this, or at least why I am, is because the increase is 6% as opposed to 2%. So I'm trying to figure out what some of the reasons are why the increase this year is more than it typically has been. And of course, identifying these computers for assessment, the $2 million that those computers will cost. I mean, that's one good explanation.
Where the state comes in and puts a dedicated amount, which is 2 raises, we can't spend that anywhere else. I mean, it has to be spent to instruction, to teachers, basically.
Last year, you had the city open your elementary school, which you knew some
That was the
children
change.
were going there. And this year, there's nothing, you're anticipating, 1,050 or so students, something like that.
Very well could be. I don't think you're gonna see that change again. You're not gonna have students leave.
Well, if you look at actual 2013-14 expenditures to the 14-15 budget, actual to budget, it was a 4.3% increase. Again, that was with just the token $120 raise. This year we got the raise driven by the state. And just that and the testing, and then preparing for, we think we have to prepare for 2.5% because we saw that 7-12. It was just K-6 that where the city got most of that growth. But we do anticipate it across the
When your
board, and we're not going to get growth money from the state to cover those positions.
Yes, so your medical insurance went up 6% as well.
Right.
It's not just 7 million for the increase. I mean, you also got your medical taken all together. I mean, you're $9.5 million.
Move on through this budget and come back this to end. We ain't gonna never get no horse sitting here on one item. Everybody's saying the same thing over and over.
Well, we just need a motion that'll pass. We're supposed to take action on the general purpose school budget, so. I'll be glad to entertain any motion anybody wants to throw out.
I'll just give some more food for thought. I happen to be, to a degree, a pack rat. And I went back and looked at 2010-11 budget. It was $250 million. Now we're at 326, 75 million in 5 years is what it's going up. It means it's going up 30% in 5 years from what it was.
1984 was 22 million.
Yeah.
Everything else gonna change.
But look at how much it's going up. Some of that was in the slowdown.
We're still $800 a student below the state average. And the numbers we saw last night, we're not paying, at least our administrative people, as much as the county surrounding us. And we didn't necessarily discuss teacher.
How much in that same period of time has the population of Rutherford County grown?
Last slide was 262,000 in the 2010 census. So
It went up 45% from 2000 to 2010.
yeah, from there to but we're not quite what 290,000 right now. So it's going up 38,000 in the last 5 years. So
You have to realize we're reactionary. We have to address that. I mean, that's our issue. We don't have any control over that, but we have to address it.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make a quick statement, and I probably should have done this at the start of the meeting, but because my wife is an employer of Rutherford County, I have a conflict of interest in the proposal about to be voted. However, I declare that my argument, my vote, answer only to my conscience and to my obligation to my constituents and to the citizens this body represents. I'd like that to carry for any discussion that we've got on the school board issues. And then I would like to say the same thing I did a moment ago to Mr. Schaefer. You re-enter your motion, you'll get a second this time.
Me? Can I do another? I didn't think I could do
It
the same
wasn't
one
seconded,
again.
you can make that motion all night, until it gets acted upon.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we implement the 20.68 pennies to the fund balance. To be able to fund balance.
And I'll second it, and I want to talk for a minute about why swimming backwards here, or whatever you want to say, crawfishing, but I've looked at these budgets too. These guys do a great job for us. You know, it's not because my wife's a school teacher. She'll probably be retiring one of these days anyway, but one of the most important things we can do for our county, if you go out and talk to the Chamber of Commerce, they're going to tell you, if you got good schools, you'll bring in the businesses, and we'll bring in the jobs. And that, to me, is the big pull. I go door to door and campaign, and I knock on people's doors, and there's some people, they don't want a tax increase for any reason whatsoever, and I understand that. But when you knock on a door and a guy in a bib overall comes up, you know, he's an old countryman, but he looks at me and he says, you know, he said, I'm really proud of what you're doing for the schools. And this guy's, you know, not making a lot of money through his life, but his daughter is going to med school because of the good schools that we've got here. There are opportunities that we would not have. I mean, I think back when I went to high school, and Mr. Ogle could tell you, you know, what we had at Kittrell was very limited. I mean, we had, Algebra 1 and 2. And we didn't have geometry, we didn't have trig, and it kicked my tail when I went to college. I had to redo those courses. But this is the most important thing I feel like we can do for our constituents and for our students and for our children. So that's why you got the second out of me. But I want to make sure we can dig everything out of there that we can. You know, if we find something that we can lower, I want you guys to look at it too. If there's something you feel like you can lower, come to us and say, hey, we can do without this, or we can do it this way. You know, if it means turning the thermostats down. And by the way, they're doing that.
We turn it
At the
off
school.
at night.
Yeah,
We turn
you
it
do.
down, we turn it off.
Yeah, they do, and I was gonna say, I'm really pleased when I saw that, so I want to say thank you.
In fact, we came in the winter when it was cold. He had to come in to make sure the ones that were off got turned back on us, so when that zero weather hit, we didn't have frozen pipes. Our people weren't doing that.
I said last night, you know, we're in a good position these days, in my opinion, with the commission and the school board. It hadn't always been that way. There's a trust factor there. You guys brought in as good of a budget, in my opinion, that you could have. There's no fluff, as we've stated several times. And, you know, and if we start cutting a budget that's coming in down to the bone too much, I mean, it's always good to cut if you can find it, but then in a couple of years, you'll be coming in with a budget with some stuff in there just so it can be what we cut. And we don't want to go back to those days, in my opinion. You know, we've got our schools are in good shape. You know, we've got one of the best school systems in the state. We're doing it cheaper than most anybody else that's in we got lower paid schools, but higher testing schools. And I don't think anybody else can brag on that as much as we can. So, gonna support this
I want
motion.
to add a comment.
Mr.
I'm sorry to say I'm not going to support the motion. I guess I want to apologize to these guys for that. I think they work really hard, and I want to do all I can to support education. I am a teacher. I've got kids in the system, but I just can't vote to send the commission a shortfall requiring 20.68 cents on the tax dollar just in this one department, and that's why I'm going to vote no.
I mean, if you were to cut the 20 cents out of it, you're not gonna have school. You're gonna get drastic. You're gonna take out sporting events. You're gonna take out all non-essentials. One year we talked about cutting buses within a half mile of school. That's not mandatory. You know, you can do away with your drama club and your bands and your sports teams and all, because that stuff is not mandatory. But you're not gonna get 20.68 cents out of this budget without doing some of that stuff. And I got a feeling you'll get a lot harder pushback from your constituents if there's not a football team over at Siegel High School next year than you will if you raise their taxes a few dollars. No further discussion, we'll call the roll. The motion is to fully fund the budget as presented by the school system.
20.68
cents.
Okay.
That's exactly what Health Net passed last night, is it not?
Y'all didn't talk about money.
But it's the same budget.
Okay.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Baum?
No.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yeah.
Commissioner Kaplan?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer?
No.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes. Motion passes. Anything else we need to do tonight? The other amendments we did last night will come through next week.
Right, come next Thursday.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Still got a long ways to go. Oh, do we need to do expenditures?
Yes, unless her motion.
Did your motion include expenditures?
At 326, 144,
Yeah, I think
38?
it did, yeah.
Okay, I just
Sure
wanted-
did.
I want to make sure that,
Yeah, if there's no objections, that's all in that same motion.
okay.
Read my mind.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now we'll move to the property assessor. Mr. Mitchell, welcome.
In your packet, the last page was the revised mayor's recommendation.
And the thing you gave us.
Yes. It looks like this.
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. Mitchell, we hope you and the mayor have had some pleasant conversations the last few days.
Oh, we got together there and we didn't have a chance to compare what we had for Memorial Day.
Y'all hope you sang Kumbaya or something, else.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Well, you can see in the right-hand column what my budget recommendation is. Let me say this, sort of give this a broad-based overview. In both the property assessor
Yeah.
and the reappraisal program there, each of those, he currently has 15 positions, 1 vacancy in each of those 15 in both the property assessor and the reappraisal program. So property assessor would have to do these one at a time. There's 14 positions that are filled and 1 position that's vacant. And the same is true in the reappraisal program. What I've done here in this recommendation, all his positions have been treated the same as we treated every other department and every other office. There's a recommendation here, and these numbers reflect this recommendation in both of these budgets, that each of those positions, now some of those positions he's paying them less than he could be paying them, but I have in the budget recommendation what he had allocated and approved, but he's chosen in a few cases not to pay that amount of money to these people currently. But anyway, the recommendation includes the full allocation of the payment of those positions plus a step increase, just like we've got in all of our other departments and offices. So that's, and we've spent a substantial amount of time confirming the validity of these numbers and what he had originally asked for and what these numbers here, there contain. So the recommendation you see for supervisor and those deputies, that summation is exactly those positions with a step increase and with the 2 days that Lisa's added to all of our positions to accommodate for the additional days, work days in the current year. So you can see that my recommendation is $1,237,993 for that property assessor component. And I guess we'll just wait and see what you want to do with that one then, and before we go to the reappraisal budget. But
Where is pictometry? Which side is it on?
pictometry is not on these two budgets. It's already been budgeted. The dollars are available. It's in the GIS budget. It's I think they have $141,000 budgeted. I think the actual cost will be $136,000 each year for the first 2 years.
Is Mr. Robinson here?
He was.
I haven't looked.
Yeah, I see him now. He was hiding up there. I may ask him to come up a little bit. I've got some questions about pictometry, and I assume that's not in the discussion right now, so I'm gonna pull that, but I am gonna bring that back up before we're done.
Okay, that's
Maybe
fine.
not
We've
tonight,
got some
but-
other comments that need to be made regarding that as well.
And I don't have to make them tonight. We can go ahead and, if y'all worked out something here that's agreeable to both of you, then, I applaud that.
Well, Mr. Mitchell, do you accept the mayor's recommendation?
I really haven't, we just got this hammered out and made it a look at it probably 30 minutes ago, so, I mean, I understand where he's got the numbers, but I really haven't had time to go back and digest it.
What are the wishes of the committee?
Make a motion approved.
We have a motion to approve the mayor's recommendation of $1,237,993 for the property assessor's budget. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Allen.
Excuse me.
Further discussion?
Just a question on the 15 people, and then you're the 16th, right? You're not one of the 15.
No,
Okay. Either one. So there's 31 total positions right now in the property assessor's office.
including myself.
So, yes, okay. And 2 of those happen to be vacant.
Mr. Baum, do you have something?
I guess so. You may be tired of hearing about pictometry, but if pictometry were included in Mr. Mitchell's budget, wouldn't it be in this budget we're getting ready to vote on?
No.
That would be in the next one.
It'd be on the next one, okay.
And I don't want to get us off in the weeds, but I do have a question. We had talked the other night about being on the county pay plan versus having a different scale that you had explored. So what is your plan going forward? Are you going to establish your own pay plan and try to work with these dollars within that, or will you stay on the county pay plan?
These are their offers, just give me this money and go off on my own.
So you will probably establish your own pay scale, so you can
I-
allocate it how you.
I would be required to do that if it's approved.
Why would you be
I don't
required?
think you'd be required to do that.
Because the offer was not to stay on the county pay plan and work out the grades. It was to give me a lump sum.
We gave you a lump sum under the assumption that's what you have chosen to do. You can, anytime you so choose, tell us you're going to stay on this plan, but even if he tells us that,
We can't.
any day of the year, he can change to using these lump sum numbers to fund his positions ever how he chooses to.
We just allocate the
Yes,
payroll.
right.
He determines how it's dispersed.
He does, he has that ability.
But there's enough money in this budget to do the county pay plan,
Yes, sir.
right there. So there's nobody being forced off the county pay plan.
No, sir.
No.
The only thing that I would say is that is what the mayor says completely accurate. We agree that I have, as any constitutional officer has, the authority to allocate their money the way they want. The only thing I would preface that with is when I did make a request on May 11th to exercise that, it was turned down. It was not processed.
I'll speak to that. And I think this is where it comes in my role, that we budget to the position. And what we have done in every position throughout the county, that we've allowed people to put somebody in at a lesser pay in a position, but not more than. For example, I'll give you two of them. And the ambulance, we budget so many paramedic positions and so many EMT positions. We don't let them put a paramedic in an EMT position because that then costs more. But you can put an EMT in a paramedic position. The sheriff's budget, we would allow somebody to come in a, let's say, a sergeant's budget, a sergeant position, and put a corporal position in that. It's less than the sergeant, but we would not allow, because we budget to the position number, not allow a major pay to be in that sergeant position because it would be more money than the position. So the question, we budget down to the position. And I think that was some of the discussion around, I don't know which attorney wrote the kind of sum, that it doesn't speak to how we budget.
Okay,
So I'm the one who said, stop, because there's not enough money. He was wanting to put a pay grade 35 in a 29, and I was saying that it's not enough money in that position. It's not budgeted. So
how do we address that with Ms. Dahlgren then? Because
she's
not on the county pay scale, right?
But
So when she sends,
She is a fee officer.
And
As a fee officer.
Okay.
And she gives us a letter of agreement. It says she will have these positions that will be paid within this range.
Well,
Okay.
our children, yeah.
So you at least have some
Specific.
brackets, you have
Yeah.
some.
We have brackets on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, going forward, these lump sum numbers, she won't be able to control by position any longer. She'll have to only control by the lump sum of the available dollars,
Right.
total dollars.
Okay.
Did we have any discussions based on matching the same plan as what Ms. Stallborn's doing, and putting the brackets on the positions?
No.
Is that something that you would be interested in considering?
He's not a fee office. This is a state
It's
law.
different.
That he's the only one that has the option to use this statute that's been specifically prepared for the assessor's office.
I guess that's one of the questions that I had in my mind from the time we met last week, which was, because of that authority, regardless of how we budgeted, were we able to tell him no? I don't know.
I don't know, because we budget down to the position, and when it, to me, it is, when you say, how much may you have, well, you've got all these vacant positions, you could then say, well, I want to take, there's what, 5 or 6 vacant positions, I'm going to give it all to one guy.
Yeah, divvy it up, right. I always try to put myself in the other person's shoes, and I'm thinking if I were elected to that office, and I was told I had that authority, and I came and said, make this change, and you told me no, I would want to know why.
And the
you know,
why,
yeah.
to me,
And
what
I would
my
wanna know, can
perspective
you?
was,
Yeah.
is that we budget to the position, and
Right.
all these are budgeted to the position, and
Right.
so do I have the authority
Right.
to say, yes, you do, you can spend as much as you want? I mean, where is the budgetary control?
So how do we answer that question?
I don't know.
Then the proposed budget.
We've never had the question
You won't have to
before.
answer that question.
And
If we
if
pass
you
this
do
proposed
this,
budget.
then he could hire as many people as he wishes within the dollar amount. Or he could, this has got 15 here and 15 up here. He could say, you know what, I've got 2 vacant positions, I'm gonna take that money and divvy it around against everybody.
We won't make
That's-
any effort to control. We
So
shouldn't. We can't.
The question at hand here is, it was originally recommended at 1.254 million. You've come back at 1.237. We can't control how you're gonna select your pay grade. This is where we're at. So,
And this is the time for y'all, you have the ability to control.
That's the only control
This
you
is the
give
time
him.
now
All
when
we do
you
is just
issue
cut
the
the budget
control.
down.
It's what payroll dollars you give him is the control.
And I'm not prepared to take a department and just use a swift hand, because he's got a right to, you know, create his pay plan and then just turn around and use a swift hand in the budget and just arbitrarily cut his budget to try to use it. I mean, I'm kind of caught between a rock and a hard place here, and the way I see it is, he's, you know, I've tried to take all consideration of all sides of this, and I went back and looked at the previous budgets here and beyond, and they've been very responsible with their department, and this is a very important role to our county. I mean, this is 33% of our revenue of our county. I mean, I think he's been trusted with the position. He's done a good job of managing it. But at the same time, I don't think the commission or the mayor really, we don't like being put in a position of, hey, I need this, or we're going to do this. And I think that's really what this is all about. Calling a spade a spade.
It's just trying to understand, this is what we're presented with, and this is the same thing that we'll be presented with, I'm assuming, in the future, because it has every position in there, and then there's a total dollar number that's on the side, and that's what we put on our budget forms. And that's what's presented, and that's where I came up with the 664, 715 on my budget request was off of this. It's a cumulative number based upon the grades that I put in my request over there.
All right, so the difference is, on that particular one, you asked, what would be the budget if I took my people to those positions? That's what I gave you.
Right.
Not that it's a blessing and this is what we're going to do.
Oh, no.
You asked what would be the number, and that's what you
Right.
got in that piece of paper.
Right. So that's how I came up with the number that I would present to the budget for my deputies to be addressed and voted on. That's what I presented. No different than we've done in a year. And in coming up with that number that I would put on the budget, that won't change next year. It'll be the same process going through, because they'll want to look at each position, what they're at, and figure out what they're going to earn. We'll come up with a total number, and the number will be put on there, and then it'll be brought forward for the request. So it's just how you accumulate. I just see it, and maybe I'm seeing it wrong. And I'll agree, I may see it wrong. I don't know. I'm just trying to grasp and understand when you're given a piece of paper that totals everything up, and you put it on a budget sheet, and you bring this before the county commission to vote on the budget, and they vote on this line item 106, and they approve or disapprove this amount on that. If we say this is the mayor's recommendation or my recommendation, you vote on that line item. You don't go back in and just say, John Smith, at this level right here, we want to vote and approve on that position number. We're actually voting and deciding on the line item. That's the way I see it, because it would be impossible to see it any other way. I guess you could, but it would make these meetings go on forever if you had to look at each individual employee in the school budget and say, this person here, we're going to vote on their line item and go forward with that position. I don't see how any department could do that, with the sheriff's department too.
Mr. Mitchell, we've had that problem, and specifically with the sheriff's department, where they would actually go in the middle of the year, give a promotion, and then expect the money along with it that's not budgeted. And that's the way I look at it. You know, that didn't go very far with most of us. As a matter of fact, it didn't go anywhere. And, you know, that's the way I look at that.
Yeah.
You know,
I
it's
didn't
not-
know
If the sheriff's department ain't no fee office.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't either.
Well,
They're constitutional
I would agree
officers.
that you don't look down to the detail, but you do have an employee that is your employee, which is Ms. Sonia Stevenson, who presented a pay plan that you adopted. So while you don't look at every single one, you've adopted the pay plan that she uses and that I use to create the budget down to those levels. So while you say that we don't, there is a basis for behind what we budget to.
And I use the same different, I used the same numbers that you had right here with the exception of my request for the regrading of the other positions.
It's perfectly okay to request additional personnel, request additional monies for personnel. I have simply recommended in every budget that's been put forward here, the current pay plan plus a step increase. That's what we've got right here. Nothing more, nothing less.
And
We've got
that's,
a pretty good compromise, it looks to me. We're a lot better off than we were last week.
Well, you've got all the people that you were asking for, if I'm not mistaken, 31.
30.
30.
29.
Well-
And the job descriptions that we based their job descriptions on, we mirrored current level 35s when we had them put their job descriptions together.
But again, the 35 is based on the comparison that was made with other governments that we're not, that we don't,
Yeah, it
that
was
our
mentioned
pay plan is not compared to.
Hamilton County, and if we want to match up with Hamilton County, we better pull out
Oh,
our
no.
check.
In Knox and Davidson.
I didn't
Yeah.
match up with those. I
But
used.
in any event, that,
said
he
the
can
other night,
recommend
Knox,
that. That's
Davidson,
perfectly
and
okay.
Hamilton.
I simply have not chosen to recommend that his request. I've simply chosen to be consistent with all of the other budgets that have come through here.
I hope we're not going back to where we were the other night,
No.
you know, and we have a motion and a second.
I've got him to call me by my first name a couple of times.
We've been on this 2 long days.
Well, and from what you requested to what the mayor's recommending, we're only off by $143,000. So it's not like this is miles apart.
So I guess we go back to our original question, you know, the mayor's recommendation right now is 1.237. He had 1.254 the other day. Then we revised it and it went to 954.
Right.
Okay.
And mine was, on that line, was 310.
Okay. And
1.310.
okay, but I guess I'm saying, I know you said you haven't had a chance to look this over, but I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth here. So I want to ask again, I guess, you know, is the mayor's recommendation acceptable at 1.237 million? Or do you need time to look this over?
I mean, I'm willing to compromise, but of course, if the job requires that we have additional people, or that we have to make I don't want to come back in the middle of the year and say, look, we're losing more people, they're going to work for the state, which is what they've done. Because the state will pay them more, they go right across town. We lost 4 people that had an average time with the county of about 8 years. You can't replace somebody like that overnight. It takes 18 months to train somebody up. I want the ability to retain and keep good people and reward them when they do a good job. That's all I'm asking to do, because it's in the county's best interest. Somebody that has experience and skill and we've spent time to train up can do a much more effective job and work much more efficiently than somebody that's green off the street. That's all I'm trying to do.
I think that's an issue with every department and every county and every state. We do have a motion and a second to approve the mayor's recommendation. And if I don't see any objection, we'll ask our secretary to call the roll and we'll see where we are. Because we're kind of bouncing back and forth right here, so. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Baum?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yeah.
Commissioner Kaplan?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
No.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan?
Motion passes. Let's move to the reappraisal budget. Mr. Mayor.
The recommendation is $1,015,797, and you can add those 2 numbers together on line 105 and 106. That's $562,800 and some odd dollars. And I believe that number is very, very close to the number that he requested previously.
You're at 100,000 off.
So my recommendation includes the same thing with respect to the current positions with the step raise, and that's part of the overall recommendation.
A motion approved.
A motion approved by Commissioner Jernigan. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Allen. Mr. Baum, did you have a question?
I guess the only thing I was going to add, going back to pictometry maybe one last time, Mr. Mitchell has expressed a preference for that to be in his budget. To me, it doesn't matter whether it's in GIS's budget or in his budget. It doesn't have a meaning to me either way. But I do feel like
Robertson to come to the table. He'll let him join us.
I do feel like Mr. Mitchell, over the years, has been efficient and conservative with his budget. I recall several times over the last 4 or 5 years where his staff has been trimmed by a position or two. It's one of those budgets that over time has actually gone down. And I appreciate that. I'm also aware that his office is responsible for collecting a big chunk of the tax revenue. Since I don't care really which department pictometry is in, I'm willing to try and accommodate him by putting it in his budget. Now, Mr. Roberts is up here, and he might give us some information that might shed more light on the subject or change my mind, but that's what I'm thinking.
Let's let the mayor.
Let me sort of review the discussion I've had with Mr. Mitchell about this even today. And I'll tell you, we understand what the need for pictometry. We're not suggesting that we don't need oblique imagery. That's what that is, okay? Because they can sit at their desk and do a lot of things there as opposed to going out into the field. Now, it hasn't been so long before there was no entities that would fly both ortho, which is straight down imagery, and oblique at the same time. In recent years, a few number of years, there are now more than one, at least two, companies that will do that. So there is some reasonable likelihood that possibly we can fly with one flight both the oblique and the ortho imagery together. And if that is a possibility, and it is a real possibility, certain things have to be proved and determined. There is the real probability, if we do this jointly, of a savings over a 5-year period that's almost $600,000. Now, this has yet several things that need to be done. First of all, whoever's going to do this and whoever's considered to do this, we have to prove that when they do this, the data that we get is usable, it's quality, it's professional, and it does the job that Mr. Mitchell's team needs. And it has software accessibility to this data that's user-friendly and effectively and to be used in a practical way. All right, so we're sort of at the beginning point of this discussion in that at least Pictometry and another company called Sanborn offer this service. Now, there are a few things in play here that this is a bit complicated, and Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Robertson can address some of these things. But here are a few differences. We have the ortho has to be flown at a higher accuracy level, and it has to be guaranteed for these measurement purposes that are used. Not so he doesn't need that kind of accuracy in the oblique, which is perfectly okay. So there is some potential marriage of these two functions being done concurrently to save the citizens of Rutherford County a lot of money. And I think that needs to be fully vetted. And it can only be fully vetted if we work together as a team on this, both OIT and Mr. Mitchell's office. Are there a couple of what-ifs here that Mr. Mitchell has disclosed to me that may make it imperative that this year we go ahead and bite the bullet and spend $136,000 for the next 2 years to get pictometry, because it's not timely for us to get this other system from either Pictometry or someone else in place. But we have data, both of these are available on GSA contracts, and the savings potential is real. This is not something that's just maybe. But he has mentioned two things, and if either one of these two things turns out to be an issue at hand, it may make our decision for us as to when we actually do this. But at some point, maybe it's not this year, but at least no later than next year, or certainly 2 years from now, we must find a way to evaluate the potential savings of these dollars. And that's the reason I think it should stay in one budget so that we can work this out together. If Mr. Mitchell believes that the state requires that for them to use this oblique data from pictometry, it must be flown every 2 years. It must be no older than 2 years old, the data we're using.
I've got a question I want to interject right there. By law, how often are you allowed to reassess a person's property?
We're on a 4-year reappraisal.
So once every 4 years, by law, you were able to. Now, if there are improvements made where I go in and take out a permit, I assume you could then at that time, or I don't know if you could, or do you have to wait 4 years?
Oh, no, we can pick up any change as it occurs, and the IAAO, which is the International Assessing Officers Association, sets a standard for frequency of flights based upon your reappraisal cycle, whether you do it on 6 or 5.
What about the state law? The state law says once every 4 years. Now, personally, I don't want you buzzing over my house more than once every 4 years to reappraise it. You know, if I decide to add something on it, I'm going to come down and take out the permits and pay the fee and let y'all be aware of it. But I don't see flying every 2 years. Yes, you have a lot of growth here, and that, I mean, that would be the reason to do this. But to me, you've got some redundancy here, Charlie, and two, I've got some questions about some things that you told us. First of all, you said if you had pictometry, you wouldn't need 3 people. Well, this budget's got those people in there. That's why I voted no on here.
3.
No, they're not in there. Those 3 positions have been removed from the beginning.
Well, that's why I was asking what the number was total over there. And my understanding from a conversation you and I had is that you were moving 3 people from the budget there, which was making it, I thought, 27. So that's a misunderstanding on my part. But still, I see redundancy with this flyover. And that's the problem I've had with pictometry all along. And one reason I'm glad he's here, and I'll bring it up tonight since we're digging into this, is our county's GIS system not capable of giving him the same thing as pictometry's doing if he gets these lateral views?
If he gets oblique flown over at the same time.
No, oblique, that's
but
fine.
right now, they don't have oblique. And
Well, that's my question to Mr. Robbins.
Let's let
Let
the
me
mayor
just-
finish
I
his
just have a
statement
couple of
first.
simple more statements and then y'all can
Okay,
go.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so there are 2 things here in place that if that's a requirement, if the state of Tennessee requires, when you're using oblique data, if it requires that the data be no older than 2 years old, then we gotta fly this year, okay? Because what data we have now is 2012 data, all right? So if he confirms that, we couldn't get a combination flight done until next year, which would make, technically, if the state of Tennessee says they can't use this oblique data they currently have another year, then we really don't have much choice, if you understand what I'm saying there.
I understand that, but I still know that you can only do this once every 4 years.
But the reason what he's doing, he's not just waiting till the 4th year to do the reappraisal. He does that reappraisal over a 3-year period. It's an ongoing process. Secondly, if whatever system we choose, if it's another system or if it's pictometry, if it's not integratable and usable in a practical way with his current camera system, whatever it is, if it's the Patriot system, they have to interface and to be linked together in a very usable, friendly kind of way. So if that's not the case with whatever other potential opportunities are out there, then that may, because pictometry is at this moment, it may make it important for us to consider staying with pictometry. That's all I've got to say about this. Now y'all can ask other questions. So I had told him if one or both of those things happen to be the case, it may mean that we just have to spend the 2. We're going to pay for this over a 2-year period. One flyover, which is already has been done in 2015, we'd have to pay $136,000 for 2 years for that one flyover. Okay, we won't. So we might have to go and invest that money before we move to something where we mesh these 2 together. And that's all I really have to say. Did I say that straight up right?
That's pretty good.
Okay, so we have pictometry now. All you're talking
Right.
about is the flyover, right? Okay, so when we talked about the control or where it lives or whatever, it's a web-based program, so it's not like it lives on a server somewhere, right?
It's not on our server.
Okay, so when we're
Right
talking
now,
about
it's not.
who has control or authority, it's only about who's setting permissions and who's dealing directly with the company, right?
Yeah.
So tell me where it belongs. I mean, tell me why that's important on where it belongs to one versus the other.
The department that has the overall greatest use is the assessor's office. Very few other departments have a practical use for it. The planning uses it.
And so what are the negatives for you if it lives at OIT and then OIT? I want you to tell me what are the
It
negatives.
doesn't really live at OIT.
Okay.
It
But-
lives
but-
in a
but-
cloud somewhere.
Okay, but it's that control, it's the control piece that we were talking about. That feels like it's one of the issues here that we're trying to sort out.
Well, I believe there were some, weren't there images that were delivered early on the hard copy that was delivered to Barbara the first pass? And we only got the online version once we had Connect, we paid for the Connect subscription. So
That's correct.
So there are hard images delivered that are on the server over in GIS that resides on their server.
Okay,
So
and-
when we purchased the Pictometry Connect, which is a web-based permission that allows us to access it over the internet or by your cell phone, when the customers go to the, it has a front-facing site, so when they go to look at their property on our website, that image that they see there, the bird's eye view, that is also provided by Pictometry's web-based version.
Okay, and the reason that I'm even starting down this road is because I assume whoever wants to control it wants it in their budget.
Right.
So that's the only reason I'm trying to figure out where's the best place for it to live, or does it matter? And when I say live, I just mean the authority over it.
Yeah.
Mr. Robertson, do you want to add anything to this conversation? Welcome, Ms. Seville.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Marlon. I guess I would just, we'll work with the assessor's office in any regard, no matter how this turns out. And we can certainly bill the property assessor's office. We do invoice people from time to time, so we can actually bill him for provision of these services. And we would be kind of his contractor who would acquire the data for him, and presumably then he could charge back still the municipalities. So I thought about the other night, one of your final questions was, what are the advantages of, what do you get if we manage it versus what do you get if he manages it? And I guess we've never taken time to educate commissioners or others about the data acquisition process that we go through. In fact, I've even got a little handout here that I won't go all the way through, but it does kind of tout our track record, I think. And I've got a copy for Mr. Mitchell as well. We came to manage GIS for the county in 2003. I'll go pretty quickly here, and you can look at this further. This just is an advertisement for the management practices that we do and have done over the past 12 years. We have successfully managed 15 data acquisitions of one sort or another. Most of those are GIS data acquisitions, but we have assisted with 2 Pictometry data acquisitions, one in 2012 and one much earlier in 2005.
So you're the one who's managing that relationship now?
We are the one that managed that contract in 2012 in consultation with the assessor at that time.
Okay.
But it was in our budget, and we managed the contract, and we quality controlled the data and so forth and so on.
So to leave it in your budget is where it's always been?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And we've already approved your budget to a point at this level with it in it, as your budget was moved through this committee.
Yes. So I would just tout the strength of our management practices and the fact that we have acquired $4.2 million worth of aerial data acquisition over the past 12 years. We've had municipalities feel strongly enough to contribute $1.3 million, and They have allowed us to manage their money, their contribution, as we've collected 6.9, almost 7 terabytes of data through the last 12 years. So there's a lot that goes into that. It is in the GIS coordinators, Ms. Marlin's job description. As you can see there, I pointed out some of the things in her job description, and that was the idea behind creating a central GIS repository and division so that we could centrally track all of the data acquisition expenditures through the years. You can see there some of our acquisition practices. We always include personnel from the assessor's office and other municipalities in the review process whenever we put out an RFP for GIS imagery, and pictometry would be no different, or whichever one we consider next would be no different. There's an extensive and elaborate quality control process that sometimes results in rejection of data, and the company has to redo that data and return it to us. There are phone interviews with other departments or agencies that use the vendor in question, and we score those as we go through. Anything else about the data management acquisition process, Barbara?
It's a pretty consistent process from vendor to vendor. It's an unbiased view when they do the review of the imagery samples that are sent. Every agency and panel member sees the data on the same computer, on the same monitor, so everybody's looking at the same thing in the same way, and they have no idea who's who. So it is unbiased in that regard. And then the rest of the proposal is then graded based on what their needs are. Whatever the panel members' department's needs are is how that has come about in the RFP process.
Individual departments' needs are really our only concern. I mean, the reason for the GIS division, the mission of GIS in Barbara is solid GIS data management from inception to installation and maintenance, while serving all the departments, ensuring unfettered and effective use of these substantial county assets. And again, we've got a $4.2 million track record in that regard, with not a single contract dispute, not a single failure to receive the data the county purchased. So we've been a serious and highly technically proficient custodian of these expenditures through the years. Working in conjunction with the mayor's office, we're able to provide continuity of service regardless of office holder changeover that might occur. Mr. Mitchell benefited from this upon his arrival, or even prior to his arrival. We started emailing, and he began to educate himself on the importance of oblique imagery. And the mayor had paused the expenditure, and obviously we didn't want to spend. I guess the flight was $279,000. If the new assessor said, we're not going to use GIS, we're not going to use oblique imagery, we're still going on site to appraise that property. So we paused that until Mr. Mitchell was able to get up to speed, and he was able to consent to that. Even though I had been asked by the previous assessor prior to his departure to place that order prior to his departure. We did not do that. We did not do that. We consulted with the incoming assessor instead. So it helps in this regard in that, in co-managing in this with the mayor, their election cycles are staggered. So that's an advantage, I think, so that we're not dealing with potentially funding up in the air with a mayor and an appraiser at the same time. So we've got some continuity there. Our track record with writing and executing GIS contracts, again, is strong and compliant with state and local private acts. We even helped Mr. Mitchell draw up his contract for his new CAMA system extensively. We spent many hours assisting with bringing that into compliance with county practices, because Mr. Mitchell's new process and so forth. So, and we assisted the mayor, and particularly Mr. Mitchell, extensively with great impact with the recent CANA system software. So again, I feel we do have a good, strong track record of being a custodian of these dollars that are spent. We do more than you all know that we do in that process, and if we are asked to continue to do that with pictometry or other oblique technologies, we will continue to do that as we have previously.
We have a motion and a second to approve the mayor's recommendation. If there's no further questions.
I did want to just make one comment. Me and the mayor talked, I think maybe about a month ago or so, and I really think that the county's grown to a point that it's time that we look into a technology council or committee. I'm sorry. You know, this is a perfect example of something that I would feel comfortable saying, hey, we'd like to send it to the technology committee. I want to know the pros and cons. Put this thing into the bullet points, because I don't think anybody here is an expert on this program or exactly what you do in your department. And we need those sorts of things. So I just want to make that comment. I think that's something that we need to strongly consider on the commission, and having a technology committee of these guys that are experts at handling this sort of stuff from around the county.
Duly noted. Commissioner Schaefer.
Curiosity question. Mr. Mitchell, if you so desire, could you take part of your salary and give it to people in your department? Does the state allow that?
No.
Just curious. Well, I know we pay it, but we get told. Okay.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Baum?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaplan?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
No.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes. Motion passes. I believe that wraps up that part. Any other business or other budgets as necessary?
Well, we've got one, but I need to talk to you about it first.
So we're not gonna
No.
talk about that tonight. Well, our next meeting is next Thursday night, which will be our regular budget meeting.
Just one more thing. Did we already approve the Board of Equalization? Was that done
Well,
Thursday
wait.
night? Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
At any budget meeting, though, we can bring up
Anything.
anything on the budget.
If not, we've got another meeting June 9th.
And if I remember, Sonia will be bringing the pay study to steering that
What
Monday.
do we have on the agenda for June 9th? We're about right there.
June 9th, that's when
You guys tell the next
that's when
commission
y'all
meeting
tell us what we're gonna
meeting
do
to
to
be,
publication. We'll go back over all the budgets. Yeah, then what, by then we'll have the, hopefully salary study built in.
We'll do that June 9th. If there's nothing else to come for us, we're adjourned.